I'd ask them to. Could everybody find a seat, please? Wow, thank you. We don't need this. Oh, we'll call the meeting to order. Do we have a closed session report?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I mean, tonight's very special. We have the Honorable Mark Lund here, and we'll ask him to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hands over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Lidster. Councilmember Luevanos.
Here.
Councilmember Judge.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Here.
Mayor Mashburn.
Here. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any declarations of conflict tonight? None?
Mr. Mayor, Mayor, we have to go over 1A, please.
I move that all resolutions
Whoops.
and ordinances. Do you want me to go forward with that? 1A, I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only, and all further reading be waived.
Second.
Call for the vote. I apologize for jumping in front of you.
Motion passes unanimously.
First time. One here.
Declaration of conflict.
What?
The declaration.
I can't hear. Okay. Once again, declaration of conflict. Anybody have a conflict with any items tonight? Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda is 1D1, a presentation of certificates of commendation to the Grace Brethren football team, 2018 Camino League champions, 2018 Division IV CIF champions, 2018 California State 2AA Southern Regional champions, and 2018 California State 2AA State champions. And Kelly Tinker is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Tonight, the City Council is recognizing our local state champions, Grace Brethren's high school football team, the Lancers. At the same time last year, the Grace Brethren Lancers were recognized for completing their, at the time, historic 2017 football season, in which they finished as the 2017 California State 2A runner-ups in the program's first ever CIF state championship appearance. It was the most successful and most impressive season of football in the small school's history. Those recent successes brought additional challenges for the 2018 season as the Lancers moved up from Division 8 to Division 4 within the CIF Southern section and were placed in the formidable Camino League along with several very competitive local programs. Clearly unsatisfied with the accomplishments of their 2017 campaign, the Lancers battled through a grueling 2018 season on their way to redemption, ultimately claiming the state championship victory that had eluded them just 1 year ago. The Lancers ended their championship season with a 14-2 overall record, and the team was able to come together at the biggest moments when it mattered the most. The Lancers worked together to overcome tremendous adversity, consistently outperform expectations, and against the odds, capture back-to-back CIF Southern Section titles and the first ever state championship victory in the school's history. To cap this tremendous accomplishment, Coach Henderson was awarded with all CIF Southern Section Division IV Coach of the Year, and several players from the team were honored with all CIF, all county, and all league team selections as well. Please come forward to be commended by the City Council as I read your names from our 2018 Grace Brethren High School Lancers football team roster. Brandon Agassi, Bryce Alba, Andy Allegra, Kevin Aranda, Nathan Bennett, Graham Blubaugh, George Bowers IV, Lewis Brown, William Bush, J.P. Cardillo, Curtis Carr III, Zachary Collins, Avery Cook, Carson Cook, Mikey Crowder, Lontrell Diggs, Desmond Dials, Dayton Ford, Isaac Garcia, Trenton Gill, Trevor Gill, Peyton Gorley, Jaden Hammer, Josh Henderson, Caleb Hicks, Justin Hill, Troy Hothen, Sam Keller, Garrett Clock, Grant Lattimore, Stephen Merlot, Cesar Perez, Remington Richardson, Brock Robertson, Cooper Robertson, Tanner Schultz, Gabe Shin, Justin Skidmore, Cole Smith, Caleb Smiley, Luke Stewart, Joseph Taase, Fo Tavai, Stanley Tafuo, Trevor Thielen, Kai Tinker, Jay Toya, Sanye Toya, Israel Uili, Danny Valenzuela, Luis Valenzuela, Sebastian Vega, Tyler Villegas, Dylan Walia, Cody White, Danny Witt, Aaron Williams, and Mikey Zelli. And we have our coaches as well. Head coach Josh Henderson, assistant coaches Rob Baskerville, Tim Bird, Rich Bush, Rory Carlton, Awan Dials, Deacon Dobbs, Jake Gould, Aaron Hidalgo, Drake Irvine, Jacob Swink, Nick Tezak, Tim Walia, Louis Zelli, Mike Zelli, and our honorary mentions, we have Executive Director Ray Blackwell, Assistant Executive Director Joseph Keller, Principal John Hines, Vice Principal Scott Nandor, former Athletic Director R.J. Blackwell, and the school's chaplain Tim Howard. Thank you very much.
It's quite obvious that you gentlemen made your school very, very proud, but I think it's important for you to know that I don't know how to turn this on. I think it's important for you to know how much this community appreciates the way you represent the community. And you've done a fine job, and hopefully you'll continue to do a fine job. And then as you leave your high school, you move up into college, you do the same. So from the City Council, all of us on the City Council, we want to thank you very much for the job you've done. We have certificates for you. We'll give them to the coaches and they'll hand them out, because I'm sure some way we won't have it in perfect order, so we'll let them get it, because that's why they're the coaches, because they do everything perfectly, correct? All right. You would like to say something?
Would just like to say thank you very much to Mayor Mashburn, our Simi Valley City Council. Appreciate this recognition. To everybody here, all of our parents and community members, we are very, very proud to represent this community, our school, our faith. I'm extremely proud of these young men for everything they are and what they've done. So again, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll take a few minutes for photo ops. Can I get the council to come down in front of these ball players?
Let's get you up in front here, Mayor. Other council members, come on up, come on up, come on up. Get in front here with everybody, please. Come on up, get in there in the front.
Julie, how many do you have?
Okay, we're going to stall just for a minute until the room clears. I could throw this on you. Okay, we're ready to get started. Could someone shut the rear door, please? The door to the lobby. Thank you. Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda is 1D2, delivery of certificate of appointment and oath of office to Elaine Litster. Please welcome Honorable Mark Lund, County Clerk and Recorder, Registrar of Voters for the County of Ventura, to administer the oath of office.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable members of the council, Mr. Levitt. It's my privilege to be here tonight to issue the oath of office to the city's new council member. And she's already here, but for those of you that are in the chambers tonight or those listening online, it's very important to listen to the words that she's about to utter tonight as she takes office. It's the public promise that any elected official or appointed official that has large amounts of responsibility, we issue this oath of office so the folks, the public that entrust you with the responsibility know that you will administer the office with integrity and honor. So let's begin. You raise your right hand and repeat after me. I,
Elaine Litster,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Not passing my first test. Wait, it's on, it's on. I think we're good. Is that right?
It is.
Thanks. I want to say thank you for this opportunity. This was such a thrill to see all of you here, and I am so grateful for this opportunity to be amongst you. Thursday, my life changed when I was one of many candidates who got to come before this lectern and speak to this wonderful group as they try to deliberate to replace that spot that was vacated when Keith Mashburn became Mayor Keith Mashburn. And so I'm delighted to try to fill a little bit of his shoes. So thank you, Mayor Mashburn. But they gave you 1 minute to introduce yourself. And I was rambling on and the red light came on just as I was to get to the good part. And so now I'm going to give you the good part that I was going to say at the time. Actually, my dear friend Kim is on the front row, and her husband, Bill, works with us. And at the office, he said, Elaine, when you go to interview, you tell them that you're approachable, that I can come to you for anything, anytime. So I meant to tell you that was one of my assets, is that I hope that I am approachable and you can come to me for anything, anytime. I recognize that, I want to tell you a little bit about the actual process. If you missed it on TV, and it was riveting TV. It was. If you missed it, they had the first round of voting, and there was one gentleman who had 2 votes and single votes, and I was not in that round, and I was very happy with who at least had 2 votes. I thought he was fabulous, but they had to have a consensus, and so then they went to the second round where each got to put 2 names in, and basically, I was the second choice of several people. So I am thrilled, just want you to know, to be thrilled to be the second choice, because it tells me that possibly I can be that consensus builder, that I can maybe be the one that helps bridge the gap. But I wanted to chat a little bit about some of the wonderful men who were also received votes, because I will tell you that our city is filled with outstanding people, any one of which who could fill this spot. But Lee Kennedy, who worked on the budget committee and did so much work with his surveying and building and analyzing things, a fabulous gentleman, owner of AV Metrics. He had 2 votes, and he would be fabulous in his position. He's going to continue working with the budget, and I'm so thrilled that he's willing to keep doing that. Fred Thomas, you know that gentleman. He ran for this office, and in fact, after he spoke, I slipped out and I told his wife, well, he has my vote if it's not me, just because he was so articulate about his vision for the city and what he wanted to do. And so and then the third candidate was David Penner, who, and I appreciate you're here, David, that he was, as I understand, is the head of the police foundation, and how important that role is, that we have a secure, safe, supported police force. And so, David, you too would have been very wonderful in this position. But I guess I got lucky, and I'm grateful to be here, grateful for this opportunity. I wanted to just take quickly just a minute to chat about some of my visions, and then I realize I shouldn't take too long. But I recognize that we have a structural deficit happening right now with what CalPERS is, as they've changed their rules. And so through no fault of our own necessarily, at least certainly not, and what I'm finding is that our current employees are bearing the burden of decisions that were made before for previous employees. And so I just want to make a commitment to them that I don't desire to make their life more difficult. Obviously, we have difficult choices to make, but I want them to know that. But I also recognize that we are the stewards of the taxpayers' money, and that we represent you and how that money is spent. And it's our desire to be sure that we are good stewards and make good choices. I will look closely at all items that come before us financially, because I want to be that steward. I'm interested in our government structure. I was honored to serve on our neighborhood council. They were created in the 1970s, just within about a year after our city was incorporated. And we're unique in that we have that structure, and now that we've recently gone to a district situation, I believe those neighborhood councils need to be articulated to match those districts so they can be of specific help. And so I'm excited to help make that process happen. And finally, I know that I'm anxious to make sure that good development is happening in our beautiful city, whether it be housing or other development. I know that we are stewards of the limited land, and we need to be wise in our choices. But we also have a mandate to try to find a way to provide affordable housing. And in fact, my parents, the only way they were able to purchase a house was because the house they were renting burned down. And so the absent landowner said, okay, I'll sell it to you at a discount. Well, I don't want that to be the way that people get to their paths to owning a home. It's my desire that we find a way that all people can have that opportunity if they work hard. I wanted to basically end by thanking some wonderful people in my life. I want to thank my husband, Greg, who's sitting on the front row. I rued the day that I took out a subscription to the Ventura County Star. Because when I did that, he started reading, and he was so excited. He all of a sudden was here almost every week. And I want you to know it was probably my fault when he finally, when he was able to read in the newspaper what was going on, and he just jumped in. Anyway, I'm grateful. I'm here because he's so excited about government, and I'm here because I am, of course, but I want you to know that he is probably more excited than, as excited as I am. And I thank Greg for being the wonderful support. I want to introduce my children to you. My oldest daughter, Elisa, is here on the front row with her husband, Kofi, and their son, Remy. And what a joy to have them here. My daughter, Elisa, then my next daughter, Lauren, with her daughter, Alexa, my son, Tanner, who's got Alexa on his lap, my other son, James, and another son who's in college in Utah. And so at the very end, maybe we can take a quick picture. I want to say thank you to some sweet friends who've been here throughout all of this fun. There were two people in particular, Becky Camp and Sandra Fernelius, who were so wonderful to help me when I ran for office 4 years ago. They were out there putting flyers on every doorstep, day after day after day. And I want to thank two other friends, Romy Nico and Joanne Johansson, who basically said, when the announcement came out about this is your job, Elaine, you've got to apply. So thank you for that encouragement. But basically, I want to give you a commitment that I am excited to be here to represent the city of Simi Valley. This is a beautiful city. There's so many exciting, wonderful things happening. And I pledge to you a promise that I will do all my best to continue in that path of making this a beautiful, wonderful place where we all live and love. So thank you very much. And will my family come up? Would you just, come on, I want you to meet my family, just because we're kind of a motley crew. So and thank you, Pam. If you would take a picture of us. Do you mind? No, I'd love it, if you would.
My little iPhone, though, you gotta be a little closer.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. I took 17, so that should be.
One more. There you go.
Thank you, Councilman Judge. Thanks, guys. So thank you for this opportunity. I'll quit talking. I'm sorry if I took too long.
Okay, at this time, we're going to take a little recess and meet in the back where the refreshments are and your opportunity to congratulate Elaine. So we'll all meet back there for a few minutes, and after that, we'll get back to the meeting. We're at recess. Okay, we're about to begin again. Could everybody take their seats and we'll get started? Okay, we'll get started. We're going to go to item 2A, which is our public statements. And we're changing the ground rules just a little bit, not a whole bunch over time. But you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And of course, when the yellow light comes on, that means it's time to wrap up your talk. When the red light comes on, I'm going to stop you. I'm not going to do any of the, well, we'll go for another paragraph or we'll go for another this or that. I'm going to go ahead and stop you. That way it can stay in my mind to keep everything fair and equal. I'll stop you when the red light comes on. The other thing is we're going to implement a process by which you put your blue card in when you arrive here, and then we'll take the cards and put them away. That way we don't have the trailing cards. Everybody that is afraid to speak in the beginning, they listen to all their friends and then they go, I think I'm going to go up and say something like he did. And then they come down and then we just go on and on and on, and that can drag on forever. So we're going to implement a new program to where you have your card in before 2A, and then once it's started, we're not going to add cards. There should be ample time for everybody to get their cards and to be able to speak. I mean, we're not going to try eliminating anybody. That's not the intent at all. So with that, we'll start our public statements.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, we have our first speaker tonight, Hal Reniger. After Hal will be Kathy Layton and Josie Hirsch.
Could you pass one of those to each other? Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Hal Reniger. I live in the Texas Tract, and I'd like to speak this evening about agenda item 8A. Unfortunately, I've got a commitment that doesn't permit me to stay for it, so I ask your forgiveness. And it's been a year since this came up, so it's one of those things that just likes to stay. After reviewing the memorandum and the attachments, several important issues come to mind, and I urge the City Council to reject the staff and the city manager recommendations. It appears the summary and staff recommendation is based on flawed data. Neighborhood Council 3 was not asked all the same questions, at least on the agenda, that 1, 2, and 4 were asked, so your information's not going to be any good. Responses from people living in HOAs are all against permitting those of us that do not live in an HOA and can create a workaround. So I ask that you send it back to the neighborhood councils and segment the HOA dwellers from the non-HOA dwellers to give you a more accurate idea of how the city feels. I believe also with the recommendation that better use of city resources and employee time could be spent on potholes and the budget items that we all know we have, rather than trying to chase a bunch of RV parking violators around and using city staff and resources to do a map and who's here and everybody. I just think we can spend our money a little bit better. I've been a resident of Neighborhood Council number 3 since 1982, and living in Neighborhood Council 3 in the same house for over 30 years. There's a lot of seniors. I may look like a senior, but I'm not. I'm not at heart. But a lot of elderly people are on very fixed incomes. And by sending code enforcement out to badger them and fine them, it's just going to make their lives miserable. Why can't we just let the seniors be? They can't afford to move to a new place with RV access, as has been mentioned from the dais in the past. And really, what's the point of the punitive penalties and fines if we can do a workaround that everybody can agree upon? Another thing that was brought up a year or so ago was having an RV opposite your driveway, which is next to somebody else's driveway, is really a safety problem. And if it were such a safety problem, why does the city permit two driveways to be together? That's the same thing. You've got the same health hazards, safety hazards. And finally, when I was younger and wanted to do something really stupid because all my friends were doing it, my parents would point out that just because they're doing something stupid doesn't mean you have to do it. And by that I mean basing what Simi Valley should do on what Camarillo or Moore Park or Thousand Oaks does is not the right thing to do. Why do it because they're doing it? So I urge you not to make a hasty decision this evening, and I urge you to consider sending everything back to the neighborhood councils, but with defined information that you want to learn, and then segment the HOA people from the not. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, and welcome, Elaine Lister. My name is Kathy Layton. I am a resident of almost 32 years in Simi Valley. And regarding that parking, the RV parking, when the city first passed the restrictions, I was thinking back to the 70s when Irvine had ordinance restricting garbage cans that were left out on the street, or what colors that you could paint your home. I thought it was absurd. But now looking at the lack of parking restrictions in the San Fernando Valley, I know we really don't want Simi Valley looking like Northridge, where it's a free-for-all. And when you don't have some kind of guidelines, people do take advantage. I've seen RVs parked on the street where I couldn't see around them. I think it is dangerous. When I bought my home almost 32 years ago, and I really do feel for people because I had an RV, but when we bought our home, we did look for a home that had reliable RV access, which was parking on the side of our house, not parking in the driveway or in the front of the house. So we searched that out, and I do feel for people that have an RV that bought into RV access, quote unquote, when they bought their home and had a slab poured, but I still don't think it's aesthetic. I think we want Simi Valley to keep up its standards, and I hope that you will keep that in mind in whatever you're doing, because I think that it is important that we do have some kind of guidelines. Otherwise, we have parking on the street, and I don't want that in Simi Valley. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, council members Loevenos and Judge, and welcome Councilwoman Lister. We're glad to see you here. City Manager and staff. My name is Josie Hirsch, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Simi Valley Arts Alliance, and I am beyond excited. Due to circumstances, our large fundraiser at the end of last year was not the success that we had worked so hard for or imagined. Our organization wanted to continue the gift to the community we have become known for. The program is called Making Music Happen. Through music instructors and band director nominations, we award musical instruments to individual students and sometimes music programs each spring here in the community. This year, we were in jeopardy of not having the capital to purchase these instruments. The members of our board of directors, along with other members of the community, donated to ensure the success of our program. This included a refund from the city of Simi Valley. Each January, my husband and I attend NAMM, the National Association of Music Merchants annual international trade show in Anaheim. These instruments are acquired through relationships that we've built over the last 15 years. Thanks to the generosity of individuals and entities, I'm here to tell you about the acquisitions this year. We have two gently loved instruments that have been given to us by musicians locally. We have a full-size 4/4 cello that comes with two bows, and an Ibanez electric guitar with an amp and new strings. The brand new band instruments to be awarded this year are 5 flutes, 1 piccolo, 3 clarinets, 2 trombones, 3 trumpets, 1 tenor saxophone, 3 alto saxophones, and 1 soprano saxophone. The value of the gift that we're giving this year is well over $20,000. And we really wanted to share this with you because it wouldn't be possible without the community of Simi Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Matthew Doros, then Bruce Boyer, and Richard Neff.
And let me get up here first. Good evening, and welcome to all the new faces. This is unrelated to why I'm here, but I am pleased to know that we were able to do an appointment and not go through the expense and the financials of doing another election. I, like everybody else here, am acutely aware of the need to generate revenue, and I'll be probably funneling ideas to you guys. But I am here because of agenda item 8A regarding mobile home storage. I was pleased to read the staff report which was leaning kind of towards retaining most of the existing rules, perhaps fine-tuning them and slightly tightening some of it up. I also, however, am here because I could find little verbiage that specifically referred to the very important need of the city to keep and maintain our greenbelt views and all of the surrounding natural beauty we've been blessed with. I'm in a situation right now where I have lived in my house for 26 years, and every house on my street has an RV parked on the side, with the exception of the one home, which is immediately to the south of me, and has an RV that stretches from their roof line literally out to the sidewalk. It's very unpleasant. I was told it would be there temporarily. It's not. It's been there for about a year and a half. I used to wake up every morning, grab my Times and my Star off the driveway, and the first thing I could do was look up and see 3-4 miles out. It was a 90-degree view. I'm now looking at about 40 feet of aluminum. I'm also in favor of no slab pouring. These people actually threatened me with pouring slab, putting up trees, the landscaping and the whatnot that they projected to do out of spite, for lack of a better word, probably would have exceeded easily the cost of putting their equipment in storage. Possibly when the city explores the matter of the huge RVs where was I? I'm sorry. In the driveways, they could also look at this particular issue with oversexed RVs oversized RVs that we did not have in the 1960s when my home was originally built. I am not asking the city to intervene specifically on my behalf. I have an attorney working that part of the problem for me. Rather, I come here tonight to just strongly urge you to take the proposed rules, carefully examine them, and ensure that the neighborhoods are not hemmed in by a sea of oversized vehicles. Bingo, right on the red. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Boyer. I'm a resident of Chatsworth Lake Manor, and yes, I'm a candidate for sheriff in Ventura County. I appreciated that Mark Lund came and swore in our new council member, and I'd like people to consider that all of these members have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That is the oath that I swore when I was sworn in as a candidate. I think it is rather, there's an adjective, but I don't want to use it, that the very man, Mark Lund, the county clerk, who refused to allow this citizen on the ballot because the state constitution says we all have the right to run for public office, would swear in an oath. So here's the good news. At a great expense to the taxpayers, Mr. Lund has us in the California Appellate Court. And on February 13th, the California Appellate Court is going to uphold the California Constitution, which will restore the right of citizens to run for public office, the public office of sheriff. So that is going to come about, and I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh, that your friend Mustache Bill, who supports your invasion of illegal aliens, is going to have to face an opponent on the ballot who is going to take every one of these illegal criminals and arrest them if they want to stay in our county, because they're accounting for 1/3 of our crime and about 1/3 of our tax dollars. Yes, all 100,000 of them. So we will have an election in this county. Now, at the last council meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh seemed to imply that she had secret knowledge that none of the 10 police officers at the borderline were armed, while Mayor Mashburn correctly said nobody knows anything. Correct, because your friend Mustache Bill is keeping it all a secret, even though there's video of everything. Well, for those following along at home, there are videos that expose the truth. Now, Chief Whitney of the Oxnard PD gave his report to the Oxnard City Council, and he stated he had 2 on-duty police officers inside when shots were fired. You can watch the video. Bruce Boyer for sheriff. I'm not saying this, he is. Your friend Mustache Bill said there were 8 officers and deputies inside when shots were fired. He asked the question. People have asked, were they armed? Well, he doesn't bother to answer it. So if Chief Livingston would like to come up, or Councilmember Judge, who is our LAPD, thank you, sir, would like to come up and say that off-duty cops don't carry their guns, they are welcome to do so. The reality is they were armed. We have names. They ran. Those people are dead because of those cowards. And when you give cover to cowards, you are one of them. Now, on our next favorite agenda, item 8A, what you've not told these people is there's litigation right now, because that's in closed session and they don't talk about closed session. There is litigation right now over the fact that this city has illegally prohibited the parking of trailers and motorhomes, legal vehicles, to park on public streets. Vehicle Code Section 21 says you can't do that. We'll continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the topic of RVs. Recreational vehicle parking. Good evening. I'm Richard Neff. I'm a 29-year resident of Simi Valley. My wife and I have lived here for 29 years. We've seen a lot of changes, a lot of growth. We've got the presidential library, first-class, world-class library. We've got new housing divisions. We've got the town mall. A lot of changes have happened, but my wife and I are dismayed a bit because of the RV parking situation when we see recreational vehicles parked in front of houses, the owners' houses, obstructing what otherwise would be a beautiful house and with flowers, landscaping. We're really disappointed to see that. So my point tonight is to urge the council to tighten up a bit, if you would, the RV code by not permitting recreational vehicles in the front of the owner's house. I would be happy, on the other hand, if you decided to just maintain the existing code. I think that's more than fair to recreational vehicle owners. But if anything, tighten it up a little bit to make Simi Valley a beautiful place, a beautiful city, make it comparable to our other neighboring cities, Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, make it appealing to people coming in who want to buy into an attractive property and not see, on the other hand, not to go the route of having the property and the adjoining neighbor's property to the vehicle owner property devalued by the appearance. So thank you very much, and I will go to the let the next speaker speak.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jenny Knack, Peter Grave or Grove, and Robbie Hidalgo.
Hi, my name is Jenny Knack. I've lived in Simi Valley less than 1 year. I came before you last fall, before the elections, over my concerns for the lack of testing of residential drinking water for contaminants that have been confirmed in numerous reports to have migrated into the groundwater and or surface water in the area. At the last meeting, the response from you was, One, possible use CLA testing. I reached out, did some of that work, contacted via email at least a dozen people at the Department of Public Health, and they all pointed the finger to one gentleman who water contamination was his specialty. His email response to me was that he could not help with any testing design because there was a conflict of interest because of positions held with, I believe he said, former graduates at the site. So we can't go that direction. The other thing that you recommended was taking our issues to the water board. My concern there is that there are several instances where they failed to issue fines when SSFL surpassed limits that the water board itself had set for the waste discharge and surface water discharge permits that they've issued to SSFL since '84. I'm not sure how to appeal to a body that isn't doing the job they're supposed to do. The last thing we talked about was putting these issues on the agenda. And here we are after the elections. There was a lot of talk about water when people were canvassing. Now that the dust has settled, I'm here to ask for your help. The private water company has said that explicitly, in person, to concerned moms, that they have no plans to cease using the groundwater. So the community deserves continuous, routine, transparent testing of specific radionuclides that have been found in the groundwater and surface water, and TCE, which over 500,000 gallons has been committed to poorly lined and unlined surface areas up there, and tritium. If there's tritium in the water, it becomes radiated water. You can't remove it. If the private water source in town is saying, we will not stop serving you the well water, the 2 wells on Sycamore, I need help in figuring out what to do next. I've got a kid. We've got kids swimming in the pools. If they're saying that they're not going to cease the use of well water for public use, I beg of you, please, on the city level, help guide the community and where to go next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Congratulations to the elected council members. And I love this city. For 20 years I've lived here. I'm speaking on the RV issue, and I really feel for you on this issue. I really do, because I looked at California, other cities, other great cities. So my thing is that I want Simi Valley to at least meet what other great cities have been successful with, and using common sense. And the council members will make a decision, and I hear something maybe that they're not going to be doing that right now, but when the council members make decisions on all these cases, it could be case by case, and it's a very difficult, because everybody is saying, I don't want it, I do want it, and it's really causing the council members a headache. Because all over the state of California and all these great cities, there's the same really good rules that benefit everybody. The city benefit the citizens, and they're really good rules, and they're usually the same. Parking on the street really isn't part of it, because California has 72 hours or 48 hours, so we don't want to park our trailers on the street. So anyway, I think that case by case would help. I think I'm going to try to form a committee that the council members can, some designated committee, because I understand, if anybody wants to give me their phone number, I understand there is no designated committee. So try to do that, so then if we do getting around to making some decisions or working with the city, that we can work with a group of people from the city on all different sides. And of course, I'm in favor of being able to park recreational vehicles, because it creates a place in case of emergency and enjoyment in life, to use legal terms. You don't want to do a sweeping prohibition, they call it, So I've looked up some case law on property use, and I've heard some things on Facebook. And basically, the city needs our help in this. It's just, I feel your frustration, and I feel the citizens' frustration. And like everybody says, either don't allow it or do allow it. But I really believe it's a huge part of our life. My brochure when I bought my house 20 years ago said RV access, but it's not the realtor's you know, you guys, you know, it's the realtor's fault that put that on the brochure. So when I did buy it, it did say RV access. But anyway, I'd like to form a committee and work with you guys. And the question is, before I leave, is there a 10-year, we're putting 10 years on this where we're not going to make any decisions right now, so we'll maybe meet with one of you and discuss that. So, yeah, because I did hear, I think it was through Stratus that there was a 10-year, so I'd like to know that. I'll give one of you a call. Thanks for hearing us tonight.
Thank you. I think if I could take a moment to explain, during the public comment portion, by law, we're not allowed to respond to your questions. And the gentleman, I think he realized that, but I wanted everybody else to know, we're not sitting up here just being rude and ignoring what you're having to say. We have an attorney over here that'll jump on us if we start carrying on. So, and that this is an agenda item where we can talk about it, but at any rate, I just wanted you to understand that we can't respond to everything you say when you're up here. We have a little bit of room at the end, and you'll see us do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mashburn, for clarifying that. I actually thought you guys just didn't like me, but that clear things up. Thank you.
Well, there are exceptions.
Thank you. Maybe I shouldn't open that can of worms. Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Mr. Levitt, Mr. Eldridge, as well as our distinguished youth council member. My name is Robbie Hidalgo. I'd like to start by, first of all, as having been part of the process of the recent appointment to which Elaine is the recipient. Thank you all for your diligence. That was a very difficult process. I know a lot of the people who are engaged in the city, that's often the comment, that people who are plugged in or involved in nonprofits all have some degree of familiarity with one another, and the effort at transparency and making a sensible, fair, and reasonable decision, it was really onerous. And I want to tell you that I think that the outcome was outstanding. And so as a citizen, I just want to say that I thought that was a model process, and thank you very much for it, and congratulations to you, Councilmember Lister. I do want to throw something out that came up from that evening. And it's funny that the issue of committees just came up. I don't know what the synchronicity of that is. It was at the moment of sequestration. Just as a sidebar, I'd walked into the room and was captivated by the brain trust in the room. And I think, Mayor Mashburn, you also noted that at the end, a very difficult decision. You would have everybody if you possibly could. And many of us knew one another as well. And I want to tell you that most of this is predicated on the issues that did come up. Some of the questions really did ask us for ideas, for solutions. And I think it's complex because many of the answers involves the complexity of those situations, and kind of came forth as saying, that's a tough problem, we really need a solution. We need a vision, we need a rebrand. Lots of different ideas, but no easy solutions. My recommendation, and somewhat of an aside from having been in the sequestration room when I was sitting in that room, was, my gosh, if I worked for the city, I'd come in here right now and sign everybody up in this room to be a member of a council special committee to potentially work on issues that come up along the lines of those that are affecting the city now. And as I've mentioned in the past, it's not the current budget crisis, which I realize the $1.3 million this year, and we've had the loan repayment, which has helped to offset, and certainly the general fund has some degree of safety net. It's the 2021 when we're looking at a $7 million, or nearly $7 million deficit, and the ongoing nature thereafter. We don't need one Boot Barn. We don't need one Chick-fil-A. We don't need to incrementally look at how are we going to turn things around. We have to figure out a way to completely balance a budget that's going to change radically as a result of CalPERS. I'm just here to encourage you to consider the formation of a committee, and potentially starting with those incredible candidates who are here before you. I would certainly volunteer, and thank you very much for all the effort you make.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Next speaker, next speaker we have is David Penner, then Kelly Walter, and Gina Gooding.
Boy, what a tough act to follow. So I too was part of the the appointment process last Thursday. I do want to thank the city council and the staff for sequestering me for 4 hours. It was a good time to really be able to speak to some of the other applicants and really hear some great ideas. So to echo Robbie's comments as well, I think you've got a large brain trust here that can continue to provide input to the city. I know I've spoken to several of the council members this evening and expressed interest in serving on the Budget Advisory Committee, but a lot of great ideas, I think, as you mentioned, Mayor Mashburn, that came out of that whole process. I felt the questions were appropriate. There was a lot of discussions back and forth as to whether or not the questions should have been made known to the applicants beforehand, but I think getting an extemporaneous response, I think, really spoke to the commitment and the knowledge that was, resident with each applicant. So the questions I thought were equitable. It was well thought out, and I think we got great responses from everyone. But finally, I want to congratulate Councilmember Lister for her selection and wish her all the best. And I know it'll be an exciting 2 years, and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and elected council. You'll have to forgive me. This is my first time at a meeting and my first time speaking in front of you. I'm here on behalf of 8A, the RV situation. I have lived in Simi all my life, and my husband and I are taking great financial strain to stay here in Simi Valley. We love the city. He works in Anaheim, and yet we stay here, and he commutes, and we want to stay here with my son, with our family, and continue to put money, small business, everything into the city. 8A would impact, should proposed ordinances pass, would impact my contribution to small business in the city. I am coming from the perspective of opening a mobile makeup studio, which would be considered a recreational vehicle. Now, that would limit where I could keep my business. I believe it is my right as a citizen that should we purchase housing and should we be considerate of the things already in ordinance, which I think the city really does have, good. There's no parking on the street. If you have to have it, you have a permit. I think that's really awesome. I think it is good that we do have standards, and I would love to see those standards upheld. However, I don't necessarily see a need for new standards. I think that the city has many more things they could be putting money and effort and attention to. I think on the list of issues that you guys are confronted with on a day-to-day basis, this should fall pretty low. I just think that your time is a little bit, and your money is a little bit better spent. Also, I think Simi has such a range of people who do not wish to see these things, who do not wish to have recreational vehicles, interesting decorations in people's front yards. There are many places with HOAs already in place that they can purchase a home or move to. I think that these proposed restrictions seem like HOA rules spilling over into city rules, and I think that's the beauty of HOAs, and the beauty of Simi Valley is that you have a range of places you can choose to live, and I think that's what makes Simi unique and beautiful, and that's certainly why we want to stay here, and I would like to see that continue to happen. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but there was a situation that happened at the front before the meeting started where a flyer was placed next to the agenda. And the way that I'm looking at it as I walk in is that it appears that this flyer is part of a distribution by the city. And that is not the case. And I find that putting something next to the agenda strategically on that table makes it appear that they're trying to create the city to have an opinion that they just don't, I think, have. I find that to be offensive, and I think it's a direct statement as to this person's character. That being said, normally I wouldn't give these type of comments much attention, but I feel lately that silence is almost a tolerance for people to be saying things that are just flat out so inappropriate. So I read an article today that was written by a first responder psychologist. And she said everything the first responders do in dealing with someone's worst case scenario, if they don't have things in their life to give them joy and meaning, then everything looks bad. And that's when people become susceptible to things like divorce and suicide. The whole world is not bad, but that's when you deal with all day long, it looks that way. And she said first responders need to feel empowered and supported. So I'm here just to say that I support my first responders, every single one of them, and I would like to invite people to now approach their first responders and thank them for their service. I do it every time I see a police officer. And I would just like to put that out there to the people to not be afraid to approach them, not look the other way. These people, these first responders need to hear your support. The suicide rate for police officers is astounding. And this is a personal issue for me, so I apologize for my emotion. But I would appreciate it if that's what the general public started to do for our first responders. Thank you.
Next speaker I have here is Stephen. There's no last name written down. Bobby James is after Stephen, and Gary Hartung, and that is the last card.
Hello, City Council.
There's a button you can raise that
Wow.
podium up.
I didn't catch that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fancy. Thanks.
Wait,
That's it. Yeah. I get that a lot. Hello, City Council. Congrats to all the recent electees, and thanks for having us here tonight. 8A. A lot of good points have been made already on this issue. I don't want to rehash anything, so I'm going to get back into what I wanted to talk about. Some of the things about the HOA, I agree with. If the city has certain rules that are spilling over into HOA territory and vice versa, it kind of makes it inappropriate, in my opinion. I know a lot of people who feel the same, a lot of people who would be here had they known earlier it was going to be on the agenda. Two things I want to point out. One friend of mine who happens to be in the room tonight, he moved to Simi Valley about a year ago. He purchased his home. He paid a premium for his property that had RV access advertised. The property is landscaped nicely. It's very kind to the eyes. His trailer is parked. It's not an issue. He doesn't have a neighbor who's calling in. The city is reactively enforcing the ordinance, as I understand. I feel that that is just, one of those things where if the neighbor is the only person who is really going to cause the city to come down and give them issues over it, what does that say to all the people that live here? That says you don't have the right to have your own personal property and not be bothered by your neighbor. What if you park in front of your neighbor's home and you bother your neighbor? Now your neighbor can call the city and bam, you got a ticket and bam, move your trailer or we're going to impound it or whatever. We don't have any kind of recourse for that. Another friend of mine who's not here tonight due to a funeral in another city, in 2011, his trailer was parked on his property and it was parked on pavers. Code enforcement came down and said, well, you can't do that. It's got to be on concrete. So at the advice of the city, he went and spent $3,000 to have a concrete slab put in on his property to have his trailer parked. The problem with that is that trailer was parked on the opposite side of the property of his driveway. The law was enacted in 2005. If it was enacted in 2005, why was the city 6 years later instructing him to put a concrete slab for his trailer on the side of the yard that it wasn't legal? I know that that's a case-by-case basis, and it's been noticed, mentioned before, and I agree that it should be addressed case-by-case basis. I believe the city should really take the time to give it the case-by-case basis because certain properties are going to have a nice new trailer. Certain properties are going to have an old busted pile of junk that hasn't been moved in 10 years. If every house is treated the same, it doesn't really jive. I feel like it's unfair. I feel like it should be read like that. I've apologized for not having a better speaking voice on this matter. I didn't have time to prepare a speech. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, everyone else. I have some pictures here. Can I give them to you?
Sure.
Thank you. I don't have a speech prepared. I just wanted to come and talk about this idea that I have to open a coffee cart. I'm having some challenges as to how to get the design approved before I spend $5,000 on it. So that's what I wanted to come down and talk about is, you know, the idea of getting that design approved. I have been in touch with, one second here, I can't remember his name. Yeah, Brian Gabler with the city. And I sent him an email earlier to, what was it, yesterday, I think it was. And, you know, he said he didn't have anything to do with approving the design of the cart. So that's basically what I'm doing. I'm in the process of building this business. And so, you know, basically I'm at that point right now is where I want to see about getting the design approved by the city or by whoever to go ahead and pursue that. Okay? I think that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm Gary Hartung, and I would like to see the City Council contact Katie Hill, our House of Representative member, and California State Assemblywoman Christy Smith, and tell them that their constituents in Simi Valley expect them to have a town hall meeting on a Saturday in June from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and a second session from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Reagan Library. The tickets would be free and purchased in advance online, and questions would be submitted in advance online. I wrote a letter to Katie Hill and to her Palmdale office because her Simi office isn't open yet, and to Assemblywoman Christy Smith. I got a letter back from Christy Smith about 2 weeks ago stating, yes, I plan on having a town hall in Simi Valley. That's fine. However, there's shortcomings with that. I don't really want to go to a town hall meeting, and I've discussed this with other people here in Simi, at 6 o'clock at night on a weekday when many people want to be in bed by 8 o'clock because they have to get up at 5 to go to work. Saturday would be very convenient for thousands of people, and the Reagan Library holds at least 1,500, maybe 2,000, I'm not sure. But it should be in that venue, and we need to know about it at least 8 weeks in advance, have them publish this in the Acorn every week, maybe in the Ventura County Star, send us an email so that we have plenty of time to register and get our seats. If anybody would like to have a flyer that I have here about this as a reminder, who is interested in this, please raise your hand and I'll give you one. Ms. Litster, I don't believe that you received one. If you could hand this to her. It's got all the information on it. It's very straightforward, nothing really confusing about it. But I would like the support of thousands of people here in Simi for this town hall. Thank you.
Mr. Hartung.
What?
Do you have an extra copy?
Well, how many would you like?
Just
I've got
Okay.
I've got one.
All right. Anybody else would like a copy of this?
Yeah, that's, I think this is. He has that cover letter.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, there are 3 cards submitted that do not wish to speak on items. Their names will be put into the record in the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, 2B, not quite youth council yet. Okay, and we'll go through, this is the time where we can respond very slightly to anything we heard during 2A. So we would start with Councilmember Lister, and have any comments regarding what was spoken at 2A. And I'm sure the attorney will let you know if it's too much.
If I'm out of line? Mr. Mayor, there is an informal guideline of 90 seconds that is used. Just, it's not a hard and fast
take more than 90
guide. But that is a guideline that people do.
But you're an attorney, so it could be 190.
I have 2 sides in my mouth.
Well, I will address the RV item when we get to it later on the agenda, but I did want to commend Josie Hirsch for her work with the Simi Valley Arts Alliance. That I just think it's so commendable that they are providing all those instruments, and what a wonderful gift that is. So I just want to say thank you for your continued involvement with that and finding somehow to make it work every year. So thank you, Josie.
Councilmember Luevanos.
As to Mr. Boyer's comments, I would just like to state the opposite of what a coward is, which is what courage. And courage isn't about being a battle-ready soldier. Some days courage is saying tomorrow is another day. This is a quote I found online. Everyone chooses when they have courage. Everyone chooses whether they're going to have that day, whether they're going to live to see another day, what they're going to do with their lives. As a teacher who has taught in Title I public schools for 20 years, and having been in an active shooter situation, I can tell you that it is hard to be courageous. So I'm not going to judge, and I would ask that you please be respectful of the people that were there that night at Borderline. We have families and communities that are mourning in the Conejo Valley, including here in Simi Valley, in Thousand Oaks, in Moore Park, and to reopen those wounds with such harsh words for the people who were there, not knowing what was going through their heads at that time, is a very difficult and harsh thing to do. So I would like to, state that we can't define what courage is for those people because we were not there and we were not in their heads at that time. As for the comment about Katie Hill and Christy Smith's town hall, I know for a fact, as a matter of fact, I was just contacted today by Congresswoman Katie Hill's chief of staff. She is planning on having a town hall here in Simi Valley. I will let you know when that date is. I will post it on Facebook, and I will put it out there to let people know. And I know for a fact that Assemblymember Christy Smith is planning a town hall as well. So that will be coming.
Councilmember Judge.
Yeah, 2 parts. I'd like to, first of all, can the city manager please address to the gentleman that came up with the coffee cart, who he should talk to in the city administration about helping him with this business plan? And the second thing is I'd like Chief Livingstone to come and address the comments made about the Borderline shooting.
Yeah, so
Councilmember Judge, what I'll do is I'll have planning staff, Strauss Peros is here, I'll have them get with him as far as the coffee cart.
Great.
If I could add on that, the Ventura County Health Department also needs to be, so we need to look from a city standpoint about the use of freestanding carts, I guess I would call it. That would be one aspect of your research. The second aspect of your research would be to contact the health department because they have very strict requirements on carts that handle that are consumable products, food and drinks. Chief Livingstone.
Thank you. I'm actually speechless when I hear those comments made in that regard. I would echo what Councilmember Lueveno said, and also what Councilmember Judge has said in the past. Nobody really has the right to judge somebody in a situation like that, or accuse somebody of being a coward that hasn't been in this situation of equal violence. Police officers are trained to do a variety of things, not just attack people and aggress at people. There's a time to retreat. There's a time to deal with things. And not only that, Sheriff Ayub has reasons for not releasing information at this point in time because there's an extensive investigation looking into this tragedy. Police officers from various different agencies are guided by department policy and state law. And when there's alcohol served at an establishment, I would argue that most police departments have policies against officers being armed while they're drinking intoxicating beverages. And so for those reasons, again, I think it's wrong to judge people that were there. There were no Simi police officers in the establishment that were off duty at the time. However, our officers did respond to the location from Simi Valley, and I saw veteran officers that saw things that were unimaginable that they hadn't ever seen before, and they'll live with that forever. So to come up here and bring that up constantly without understanding department policy, procedures, good common sense, I think it speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. There were a couple of good comments on a couple of different items. The RV committee, I like that idea. So depending on how our discussion goes tonight, let's keep that in the back of the mind. I'd be willing to work on with something like that. And also, I did want to say thank you for all the people that did apply for the open position, and congratulate Councilwoman Litster. And I also liked what David Penner said about a brain trust. My understanding, the 14 people that were interviewed, they were all outstanding. So it was really, really great to see that. And I was thinking of something, we used to have 2020, or a committee that did 2020. And I was starting to think of something like a Vision 2025. So maybe that might be something that we can look at and then put together especially some of those people that express such an interest in becoming a city council member. That might be something that we can do in the future. I like that idea too, so thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. What I'd like to say is to the lady who was, I'm sorry I've forgotten names, talking about the water and checking the safety of the water. I've said before, and will continue to offer up, that it is our job, our duty, to make sure the water's safe. And I'm more than willing to do what I can to see to it that our water is tested and it comes out to a good outcome. One thing that, through my limited research on the issue, is the water is controlled by the state. The quality of water is controlled by state laws. So we could certainly go out and have the water tested and come up with an agreement on the testing process and the results. But if they fall within state guidelines, then our case has to go to the state folks. And that's when we would have to get somebody like Christy Smith involved or something like that. It's not something that the city could do. We could certainly ask for it to be done, but when you're talking about changing state regulations, that's a major step. So that offer's out there, and I'm sure others here on the council would be willing to participate in whatever it takes to make sure our water is perfectly safe. The request to have Christy Smith and Katie Hill here, that's so much easier said than done. Those folks, one lives half of her life basically in Sacramento, and the other lives half of her life in Washington, D.C. And so for us to tell them they're going to come here on a Saturday from 2 to 4, or whatever the case may be, very, very difficult. I think what we could do, and I think it's already being done, is tell them that we have folks in the community that would love to have a town hall and have them participate. And by no means do they both need to be here together simply because their calendars may not match, or they may not want to do it that way for any reason. And lastly, it's my understanding, maybe the city attorney can help me here, that an event like that cannot take place at the Reagan Library. I think they have absolute federal law against having a political event there. So it would have to go somewhere else. And we can make accommodations for that. And those are my comments. Now we're ready for youth council. That's all right.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item is 2C Youth Council comments. And tonight we have Joshua Juwanma.
Close enough.
Here for a presentation.
Okay. I'm good. Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. My name is Joshua Jivanmol, and I'm currently a senior at Royal High School, serving my first year on Youth Council. I've enjoyed the experience so far, and I'm looking forward to the packed schedule we have set for the upcoming months. So far, on January 18th, we held our annual Youth Town Hall at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum. After months of preparation and rehearsal, I can deduce from the opinions of my fellow classmates, as well as Youth Council members, that the annual event was a success. This year's focus on public safety and mental health, along with the presence of distinguished panelists, Congresswoman Katie Hill, Mayor Mashburn, Deputy Chief Brill, and Dr. Salgado, helped spark an abundance of crowd participation from eager students that desired to get their questions answered. On behalf of the Youth Council, we thank you for spending your day with us, Mayor Mashburn. On January 23rd, we hosted our first restaurant fundraiser at Mod Pizza on Cochrane. Youth Council members advertised the event in their schools and on social media to much success. We are excited to announce that we raised $151.88. We want to thank everyone that supported us by attending and fundraising this opportunity to people they knew. As a main fundraiser, we are planning a community-wide talent show for all ages in late spring. Contestants can sing, dance, perform stand-up comedy, anything that showcases their talents. All funds that we raise will go towards the support of our anti-bullying and suicide prevention campaigns, printing teen resource numbers on the back of student IDs, and our Youth Summit. Speaking of the Youth Summit, we are making rapid progress. Every meeting we practice for our group sessions and are working to research our assigned topics. Youth Council members are currently promoting that students complete the online Youth Summit application. Interested individuals can apply using the link www.semivalley.org/Youth Summit. This year's theme is There is a Hero in All of Us. There are only 185 places available, so we recommend to anybody that would like to go, please sign up as soon as possible before those places and spaces are filled up. Youth Council meetings are held every first and third Tuesday of the month in the City Hall Community Room beginning at 5 p.m. If you would like to see what the Youth Council is about or get involved in your community as a whole, we invite you to attend these meetings. I thank Mayor Mashburn and the City Council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this moment.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You said the talent show, and I missed, where is that going to be?
So at the moment, the talent show, we are planning on having it at the Simi Valley Cultural Center at the end of May. So that is the plan.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you for your report. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, and there are no resolutions for consideration tonight.
Would anybody like to pull anything on consent? No?
Mr. Mayor, move consent items 1 and 2.
I'm
Would you
sorry.
want to pull something?
Yeah, I'd like to, just for, to ask some questions to educate, I would like to pull 1 and talk to staff about consent 1.
So then I'll move consent 2.
Second.
Yeah. Call for the vote on consent 2 only. Okay.
It's always wrong.
Not all of us are 6'10". Good evening.
Good evening. I have just a couple of questions where I'd hope you'd just maybe give us a little insight and explanation. Number one, I like the staff report. I like what you're doing in the throwing out the bids, I guess, in a sense, and asking for more. But I was thinking, it seems like we've heard controversy about these landscape districts. So if you could give me some insight into it. What my math came up with is that the increase, if you were to approve one of those bids, would be, especially from the existing contractor, the increase would be $374,000, a little over that. Is that a normal thing going on, and would that be an acceptable increase?
Well, I don't know if it's normal. All of the bids, as I recall, were about a $300,000 spread. But what we did in this case, and what we've discussed with the city council in the past, is that we have several landscape maintenance contractors contracts for our landscape assessment districts. And we have this year and in the coming years are trying to reduce some of the strict requirements that we have now to try and reduce the cost, because the cost is affecting the general fund. And so we were surprised when these bids came in higher, and we had reduced the specifications as to what they were required to do. So that's why we were recommending rejecting the bids.
Okay, well, again, I applaud that action. And then the only other question I have is looking at the history, it looks like there's multiple times that the contracts have been extended and carried on, and we have to add money to it. And it doesn't seem to be unfair money for the time frames. But why is it that it's not a smoother flow, I guess, from beginning of contract to end of contract to new contract?
I don't know that it's not smooth. Basically, we will do a bid, award a contract for 2 years, and then we often put in maybe two-year options. And each one of those options, they're allowed to increase by the cost of living. And so in this particular time, it was time to rebid the contracts. And so, like I say, I don't know that it's...
So
I would just add that this time around, it has probably been a little bit, I guess, more unusual in that the Budget Advisory Committee did recommend certain reductions in the landscaping, especially for the district areas. And so I think Public Works has gone back to the drawing board to create some different specs for some of the landscape contracts. So I think that may have added a little bit to that perception. Yes. I don't know.
And then sounds like 2 of those extensions are they were in the original contract that included, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. All right, well, again, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're doing and appreciate it. Thank you. So I'll make a motion to accept consent 1.
Second.
Motion and second. Vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda is 8A, request for direction on the Simi Valley Municipal Code requirements regarding off-street parking, including recreational vehicle parking, located on residential properties, and Stratus Perros and Sean Gibson are here for this presentation.
Before you get...
Members of the City Council.
I'm sorry, little housekeeping. Would everybody, including ourselves, make sure you're speaking into your microphone, and anybody from the audience, when you come up to the podium, please make sure you're speaking into the microphone. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, the members of the City Council, Deputy Director of Environmental Services, Stratus Perros, City Planner Senior Planner Sean Gibson. Last February, many community members spoke at the City Council meeting expressing concerns about violation notices they had received related to recreational vehicle parking on the property. These violation notices generally involve parking of vehicles on unimproved surfaces or these notices generally involve parking of vehicles on unimproved surfaces or unimproved locations at single-family residences. The City Council decided to pause enforcement and directed staff to meet with the community at each of the neighborhood councils and to come back with a report. Staff met with each of the 4 neighborhood councils last April and May. For everyone's benefit, I want to make it clear tonight that staff is not proposing any changes to the current ordinance, nor is the City Council voting tonight to change the current ordinance. Rather, the goal for tonight is to hear from the community and to see if the City Council wants to direct staff to take any further action. On this slide, our current off-street and RV parking regulations have been in place since the mid-1980s, and interestingly enough, that ordinance from the 80s was actually created by a committee, by a citizen committee, not necessarily by staff. A related ordinance was also rated in 2000 to limit on-street, parking at the curbside, to limit on-street parking of recreational vehicles. Currently, the ordinance limits on-street parking of RV parking to 48 hours, and a special permit can be granted for visitor's day. Related to tonight's parking discussion is the front yard landscaping ordinance, which was adopted in 2005. This ordinance mandates that a minimum 50% of the front yard of a single-family residence must be landscaped. Other related code amendments have also been adopted over the years, including limitations on circular driveways and allowing for artificial turf. This is a map of the city of Simi Valley. Our ordinance we're talking about tonight, RV ordinances, applies citywide. It also, what this map is showing is where homeowners associations are located throughout the city. They're all the colored areas on the map that are not gray. Homeowners associations have to comply with the city's rule. However, homeowners associations can have also rules more restrictive, not less restrictive, but more restrictive than our current ordinance. So they may want to have their own RV parking rules separate from the city. But our city ordinance establishes a deal on the floor for the entire community. This slide is a depiction which shows where all vehicle parking, including all Vs, are allowed by today's ordinance. The shaded areas show both front-loaded and side-loaded garages. A 10-foot area located directly next to the driveway. And then parking is also allowed on either side of the house and only in the rear yard area where it leads to a detached garage. Please note that one of the challenges with creating a one-size-fits-all code is that not all properties look like this. Many parcels or homes are not rectangles, and their irregular lot design or building orientation on the lot creates the need for careful interpretations by staff. This slide shows the front yard landscaping requirements. A minimum of 50% of the front yard must be landscaped. Up to 100% of the front yard may be artificial turf. The hatching shows the front yard and parkway areas that we include in our calculations. These next few slides are going to show typical properties that comply with our current code. This is a single-family residence with an RV parked legally on the side of the driveway. And you also note that it has a minimum exceeding 50% of landscaping in their front yard. This next slide in this photo shows a home with a side-loaded garage and a RV legally parked next to the driveway. Although not shown, the landscaping requirement does also comply in this particular house. This next photo shows a home with a detached garage and a long driveway. A vehicle can be parked along this entire driveway or inside the garage for that matter. This photo shows 3 homes in a row, each with an RV legally parked in the driveway. And I include this photo to remind everyone that we're not just talking about individual properties. We are talking about the entire streetscape, the entire city, and how the current rules allow this exact situation. This slide is important to remember if the decision is to add even more front yard parking in the front yard. This next slide shows, staff did examine other communities' parking requirements. In comparison, our current city ordinance is generally more permissive than these other cities. Most cities either limit parking to just on the driveway or in the rear yard behind a screen fence. The provision in our code where we allow parking to the side is unique to Simi Valley. These next few slides will show some of the common violations that we've experienced in the city. This particular slide shows a trailer legally parked on the side driveway. What's in violation is the motorhome parked on the other side. You'll note it has to hop the curb to get to this location. And again, we remember that photo, the handout, which shows the shaded areas. This was not a permitted location for a vehicle to be parked. Also note that this property doesn't meet the 50% minimum landscaping requirement because of the added pavement where the motorhome is sitting. The next slide is this motorhome in this photo does comply with our code. It's in the side yard. However, another common violation in this situation on corner lots is where people are driving their vehicles up a pedestrian handicap ramp. Also, the trailer in the front there is parked in a location not allowed by our code. This next photo shows another common violation where people are both parking in not allowed areas and also have paved 100% of their front yard. This may seem like an extreme example, but it happens more often than you think throughout the city. This next photo shows another common situation where people are parking along the RV in an effort to stay on the driveway. This configuration is not allowed by other cities, and because it's typically due to fire and safety concerns. This photo shows rear yard parking. This configuration is currently not allowed in Simi Valley because there's not a driveway that leads to a garage. But if there were a driveway, this would be allowed in other jurisdictions where they do not allow front yard parking. One concern about allowing people to park in the rear yard is if people would abuse this code. The next slide shows an extreme example.
Oh.
And clearly when we showed this to the neighborhood councils, I got that same reaction. Rear yards are typically hidden from view, and this extreme example shows multiple vehicles being parked in the rear yard on unpaved surfaces. There are many public nuisance issues related with this situation, but when you look at an aerial view of the city, you'll see this is not unusual. It does happen. The next slide shows another situation where there are a lot of large properties in Simi Valley, and the same off-street parking and recreational rule applies to those larger properties. This photo shows a situation where multiple recreational vehicles are legally parked in the rear yard, and frequently large properties have also been functioning as a de facto storage yard for large vehicles. As mentioned earlier, staff met with all 4 neighborhood councils last April and May. Both pro-RV and parking, and if you will, anti-RV parking sentiments were equally expressed at these hearings. Staff explained the importance of maintaining a balanced approach and landscaping requirements. We also discussed the pros and cons of expanding our current parking standards. We solicited several questions at each meeting with both neighborhood councils, executive boards, as well as with the audience members. The results are contained in your staff report tonight. Generally, there was a split decision on the question about allowing additional parking in the front yard. The majority of the board and the audience votes supported maintaining the 50% front yard landscaping standard. However, and lastly, there was a split decision amongst the groups about allowing more rear yard parking. So what to do? Staff is seeking direction from the council tonight. Again, we are not proposing any changes to the current code. After hearing from the public, the council could decide to do any of the following. One would be to keep the current standards just as is. Others would be to be exploring allowing limited rear yard parking. Another option would be to explore allowing alternate parking in the front yard. Or to create an amortization period where we bring non-conforming properties into compliance over a period of time. The last one I'd like to add is currently recreational vehicle parking is allowed in just one zone of the city, the GI zone. And we do this for a couple of reasons. We don't, recreational vehicle storage yards, they don't contribute any sales tax revenue to the city. We try to encourage our properties to generate those industrial zones to generate jobs. However, there's very limited GI zones available. So one thing we could consider is, do we want to modify our land use standards to broaden where recreational storage facilities could be opened, where people would have another option to store. The facilities we have in town are nearly 100% occupied, and the prices are high, and people, for financial reasons, chosen not to store their vehicles there. But by broadening the opportunities to allow more of these businesses, it might meet the demand that we have out there. So in conclusion, that concludes staff's presentation, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councilmember Litster.
I'm looking at the recommendations that you've made. I don't see one that involves the backyard. Is that correct? In the recommendations that were our choices?
I'm not sure if it was in the staff report. It was one of the things we wanted to share in today's presentation, and it is something that other cities do allow that we don't really allow very much here in Simi Valley.
So am I understanding that at the moment, after a year ago, basically we have put a stop on ticketing right now? Is that or not? Is that I mean, for failure to abide by the code? Did I misunderstand you?
Well, I would say the city council decided to put a hold on enforcement while we went through the process to address this issue. About a couple dozen properties were cited at one time. The decision was to let's examine this further. We did go to the neighboring councils, and we were actually ready to bring this back to the city council last summer, but due to scheduling issues, decided to get being called. But we're here tonight. And so the goal here is to discuss if the standards could be applied just the way we do them, or do we want to explore changes? It's a tough situation.
It is. And I just want to understand better your last recommendation about possibly opening up, you said a GI zone. Where would you recommend additional storage? What were you suggesting?
Well, currently we allow it in primarily just one zone of the city, the general industrial zone.
Right.
And there's not a lot of those properties in the city just sitting there empty and vacant and ready for development. So perhaps we can consider some of our other industrial zones like light industrial or maybe a commercial designation if deemed necessary. If this is a land use type that we want to encourage more of these business types.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Luevanos.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So my first question is about, especially, I was very disturbed by the pictures of all the vehicles in the backyards, and it wasn't paved, and I want to know what the environmental impact is of all those fluids that are coming out of the vehicles and seeping into the ground. And I mean, we just had a comment about contaminated groundwater. So could you speak to that issue at all?
Oh, yeah, exactly right. We require vehicles to be paved on a paved surface for that reason. We don't want oils and greases to be dripping into the dirt and potentially getting into underground water system. There's also, when you see those egregious examples of that vehicle sort, it's a public nuisance issue. If there's an emergency, if there's a fire department call or a police call to that property, those all become obstacles for first responders. Also, they're like a harboring for, vermin and rats and other infestations. So there's a health issue assorted with that. So clearly, regardless of what happens tonight, we don't need to tolerate those situations. It's just that when they're in the rear yard, you typically don't know what's going on unless the neighbor complains.
My second question is with regard to, I read the comments in the staff report, and it said several residents said they were concerned about quote unquote irresponsible RV owners, such as those who have more than one RV or other vehicle. So I'm curious, are there people that have more than one RV, or they have an RV and a trailer and an ATV and a boat, and does that happen often? Is that something that we're dealing with constantly?
You will see that sometimes people just have the one vehicle parked respectively on their property. Sometimes you'll see multiple, if you will, toys, trailers, boats, RVs, motorhomes, et cetera, as well as regular other passenger vehicles parked on the property. In those that image where you see the large properties with multiple motorhomes, we have no idea without checking the registration. Do those all belong to the property owner or the resident on the site there? And so that's one of the challenges dealing with these multiple vehicles on these large properties. They become de facto storage yards.
Okay, my last question, and I don't know if you can answer it or if our city attorney Lonnie can answer it, is about, there were many comments about purchasing property that has RV parking. You know, whose legal responsibility is it to disclose whether or not that's within the laws? Is that the purchaser's responsibility? Should the purchaser of the property look to see whether that's in compliance with the code when they're saying there's RV parking there, or is that something the realtor has to disclose?
Yeah.
Is that something the purchaser has to investigate? So whose responsibility does that fall on? And if someone has purchased a property where they do say there is RV parking, what is the remedy?
Yeah, I always encourage people when they're about to purchase a property to come to City Hall, take a look at the permit file and see what we have, or to ask the staff counter person what is the correct answer. Because it's sometimes difficult enough for staff to look at all the nuanced differences on every single parcel and to apply the code properly, much less to rely on a real estate professional. So we do encourage people to come down, look at the permit history. Same thing if there's an addition onto the home, was that done with the permit? Those all eventually will, sometimes the seller will sell it as is, but sometimes for a purchaser, it makes a great sense to come to City Hall and ask us, and we will give them the correct information.
And to answer the part of Councilmember Lovanos's question about between the seller and buyer, it's a matter of private real estate law for that, and I can't answer if there would be a cause of action or not. If someone did or did not disclose properly that. I know it's very important on the on some of the buying and selling listings, however, but I can't answer the private civil question.
Thank you.
Councilmember Judge.
Yeah, that one egregious picture you show with all the cars in the backyard, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there already state codes that is a violation of already?
Yeah, that's actually a violation of our current parking requirements.
Even if it's not the city's violation, there are state codes that don't allow you to park any vehicle dripping any kind of fluid on anything other than a paved surface. Am I correct?
Yeah, that would probably relate to the public nuisance section.
Right. So, we're not going to be aware of any of those things unless the neighbors tell us about it, because we're not flying drones over the city 24 hours taking pictures of people's backyards, correct?
Correct.
So it's not a surprise. That stuff's going to happen. When we find it, we'll address it. That's an egregious example of RV parking in the backyard. I do think that some of these ordinances need to be changed to allow for people to park their property on their property. I'm not saying it should be allowed in the front yard, but if they have a place to put it on the side or the back, the city should not be getting in the way of that. And there shouldn't be a rule for a garage. As long as it's on a paved surface, it's not going to let the leakage go into the dirt. We should be looking to do something like that.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Hi, just a couple of easy questions. First, one of the speakers addressed the fact that neighborhood councils number 3 looked like it only had 2 questions. And I believe I mentioned that earlier, and it was, one of the questions was actually 2 melded into 1. So I kind of wanted to address that, right?
Yeah, these were, informal presentations, and we actually, as we met to each of the 4 neighborhood councils, we tried to improve our presentation, streamline it. So all 4 neighborhood councils were essentially asked the same question. How we combined them from one to the other might have changed, but the same items in your staff report summarize the information we were searching for.
Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify that. Also, could you put the pictures back up there? I just had a couple questions about 2 of them. The one where all 3 are on the same street?
Oh, yeah.
Just start with that one. Okay. Are those 13-foot setbacks? 13 feet?
Typically, in a zone like that, we have a 20-foot front yard setback from the property line, which is typically behind the sidewalk to the front wall of the house or the garage door.
Okay. But didn't our zoning say from the curb, 13 feet from the curb?
That was a different jurisdiction.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. But so we would consider those okay. I'm just trying to get a visual to make sure.
Yeah, those are all properly parked. If you look at each one individually, they're all properly parked. It's the cumulative impact of everybody doing on a block that some people either find acceptable or some people find objectionable.
Right, no problem. And sidewalks are clear. It looks like clear sight once you're backing out.
And this is the other issue that's frequently comes up in other jurisdictions where they prohibit this sort of thing, front yard. It's when, let's say, you're the neighbor next to that and you're backing your car up, or there's a pedestrian walking down the sidewalk and they can't see around these visual obstacles. That's why some cities preclude this RV parking in the front yard. It creates a neighbor conflict because of visibility.
Okay, but according to ours, these are fine.
That's okay.
Okay, I want to make sure. Then there was another picture where the majority of the yard was
paved.
The parkway was also brick. I was trying to get a look at that. That
in the violation section.
Well, that one was one of them, not this one.
It was that last one.
Go back to. Was it this one?
No, I thought there was a different one. But what I wanted to clarify was this one. Okay, so we were saying it doesn't meet the 50%. But if the parkway was grass or landscaped, would that have?
That would help, yes. However, the fact that it's there's two issues there. The landscaping being below 50% and the vehicle being, the motorhome being parked in a situation that's not complying with our current standard.
It's hard when you look at our standards and you look at this because this looks like a nice front yard.
It does.
So it's kind of hard to put the two together. Okay, that was just what I wanted to know. We do include the parkway. Thank you.
The motorhome on the right part of a different house?
Yes. The question was, is that motorhome on the furthest to the right parked at a different residence? And
Oh, yeah.
It does belong to another resident.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm only looking at the one RV, and
But it's showing 3 RVs.
Right. Oh, I agree.
That grass is, that front yard is.
Let's
Yeah,
hold on.
Yeah,
It's
we're
comments
fine.
for the council.
I'm done. Thank you.
Councilmember Kavanaugh. This was started out as questions of staff, but I think we're moving into comments. So does everybody want to make comments before? Because I don't really have a lot of questions of staff, but I do have comments.
I have one more.
Okay, so
I have
we'll
one more
go-
question. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Mayor Mashburn? I was curious, you said like this one, in order to get into the driveway, they have to go up the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So, and, you talked about the RVs going up, the other pictures showed the RVs going up, handicap rampways and things like that. So my concern is, what is the cost to us, the city, or, with regard to damage being caused? I mean, these are heavy vehicles, they're going up the sidewalks.
Yeah.
That's the city's responsibility. So I don't know if that was something that you investigated or not, or that you could.
Yeah, this is in the realm of public works, not necessarily planning, but I can tell you, when they construct these pedestrian handicap ramps, they're not designed for vehicles. When you run a heavy vehicle over that opening, it typically breaks the concrete over time. And so that's the concern about using a pedestrian ramp, whereas a standard city driveway is engineered properly to accommodate the vehicles that are traversing it every day. So yeah, there's a liability, well, there's a damage to city property, if you will.
So that would
and also hopping the curb is the other one.
And that would be a cost that the city
Yeah,
would bear?
that's a cost. Well, it's
And the taxpayers.
the damage to the city infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay, comments this time. Comments, not questions.
Do you want to do comments before the public comments, or wait?
Huh?
There are no public comments? Okay.
We don't have any cards for the.
Never mind.
Okay, Councilmember Litzner.
Well, I have to tell you personally, I'm one of those homeowners, not in this city, that had an RV parked in the backyard, and so I'm seeing all of this discussion, and so it was not this city. I just want you to know that, but that was my experience, and so it was a paved drive, but it didn't go to a garage. It was unpaved that went all to the back, and it seemed to be just fine. And so I guess my question as I'm looking at this is, and as I look at the neighborhood council, basically I tallied all the responses, and it looked like 65 were in favor of backyard parking, 20 against, 8 had no opinion. But it seemed like a large portion was in favor of backyard parking. So I guess my question, I know we're discussing whether we just leave things the same or do we change it, but I would be very interested possibly in expanding backyard parking. Tell me, I guess that we're past the question portion, but I'm trying to understand why it's critical that it be garaged.
It's the way this city's ordinance has evolved. Some cities don't have that garage, the driveway leading to the garage requirement. It was unique to how this city's ordinance originated. Some people don't like, even RVs in the backyard neighbors if, the vehicle is almost like right next to a window or in the side yard, if you will. So it's hard to make everybody happy on these things. But clearly a lot of cities do cheers the rear yard option because it's behind a wall or a fence and screen more from view than those front yard images.
Right.
Okay. Councilmember Luevanos.
I've would first like to say, I am in favor of expanding RV storage. It seems to be something that people really, there seems to be a need in the community at large to have more RV storage. I know when I go to Oak Park, I see it's awful. So that's the only RV storage that I know of in Simi Valley. So I would definitely be in favor of looking at those, at that option of increasing the ability of RV parking, because I know so many of our residents really utilize their RVs. I don't know if there's specifics in what we have. I did see that a lot of people were in favor, including the comments tonight and emails that we received, of leaving the law as it is and allowing the front yard parking. My concern with the rear parking is that I know that staff has already stretched thin with code enforcement, and I just don't know how feasible that would be for, to allow backyard RV parking, and then, do we have the ability and staff to stretch ourselves even further, and do that code enforcement as well for the backyard. So that's one of my concerns about doing that. But it seems like the majority of the community is in favor of keeping the law as it is. But, I would like to update it and make sure that, it's one RV, not 5 RVs, not an RV and all this other stuff. And to make sure that that's accessible, having more RV storage for those who would like to have it that do not have it accessible.
Thank you. Councilmember Judge.
Thank you. I know you see your hand up back there, but you can't make comments right now. You just have to sit and listen. I would like the ordinance to be amended so that we remove the garage portion of the rear yard parking. That would be one thing I'd like to do, so I'd like to have this brought back to us. And I did agree with the speaker that came up during public comments, whereas when I bought my house in Simi Valley, I specifically looked for a house that was not in an HOA because I didn't want somebody telling me how to paint my house, what color my mailbox had to be, or anything like that. There are areas in this town, there are plenty of areas in this town where if you want to live in an HOA, you can. And your price in your house is probably about the same as a non-HOA. So that's your choice. But most people in this town that I know of that don't live in HOAs do that for a reason. Just like the people that live on the county streets, they do that for a reason. They want to live there. So to tell them that they have to do this and that with their property, as a city, in my opinion, is just a little bit of overreach. And it's something I've been arguing about for the last 8 years on the dais up here. I've been trying to get this ordinance switched around since then. And like I said, when this came back to us last February, this should have gone to the neighborhood council with a committee made up of citizens from both sides of the story, not having staff just vomit out our ordinance and saying, here's our ordinance, is it good or bad? Because that's what you did. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
I have to follow him? Okay. I also agree. I think our ordinances currently are fine. If we want to look at expanding into the backyard, I don't have a problem with that. But what I wanted to somewhat do is when a complaint is received, take it on a one-on-one basis and either try and fix it or mitigate it to the city code. There are various ways we could possibly do that. Landscaping for coverage. I see one RV in a front yard. Yes, granted, it's not parked quite correctly, but they've done their best to mitigate it with landscape and some other stuff, so it's not quite in your face. Limit the number of vehicles to the property size. I mean, I think that's kind of, you can only get so many trailers and toys onto your property, so that could be worked out. And then time at the property. If you've been at your property for a long time and you've met all the requirements, to me, one of the important requirements is the proper surface. So if you're on the proper surface, if you've allowed a clear sight to the street, if you have a landscaped front yard, maybe it's at 40%. Maybe we can mitigate that, that type of a thing. I'd like to work with everybody one-on-one because we have people that do have RVs and enjoy them, and then you have your neighbors that might not enjoy the view. So maybe I think if we try and work together as a community and work with the city within our guidelines, we can get a happy medium for everybody. He's talking about backyard. I know we're a little strapped right now in the code enforcement, but this is just an option, don't yell at me. Maybe allow for, if you want to park in your backyard currently, have a permit. They can apply for a permit to do that. Maybe if we want to do, if they're non-conforming, we might want to give an actual permit for the non-conforming while they're at their location and they own their home. Those are just kind of a couple ways I'm trying to work it so those people that have put a lot of money, put a lot of time into where they keep their RVs and want to keep them there, if we can work stuff out for them. I know we don't have enough RV parking here in town, but not everyone wants their RV at a park. Some people do like to keep it close to them. And in full disclosure, I do have a trailer in my driveway, and it's legally parked. So.
Could we get, we'll have code enforcement verify. Okay. I too have lived here a long time, multiple homes, multiple RVs, and so I'm coming from a position of being on both sides of the fence. First of all, I'm going to do a little backwards here. The rear yard, I happen to live in Bridle Path, have a very large rear yard. And I don't understand, so it's something for staff to look at, the need that if I have a driveway that goes back to my back property where I can put my RV where it won't bother anybody, but I'm illegal if it doesn't go back to a garage. What if I don't have a garage back there? What if I don't want a garage back there? What if I don't have a barn? And what if my barn holds horses and doesn't hold RVs? The requirement to have a garage so I can park my RV behind my home on a large lot, I think is probably something we need to look at as for change. Okay, this, in my opinion, this issue started because the city did not enforce its ordinance. And to have an ordinance that you're not going to enforce, to me, is silly. Why would you do that? If you have an ordinance, you enforce it. And so what happened is many fine folks would come and buy a home and they'd see, well, the guy down the street has an RV in his front yard, it must be okay for me. Or an unscrupulous realtor said, oh yeah, this is RV parking, you can do it. And so if you looked at the one slide that I think had 3 or 4 RVs, very nice, clean, and they put in nice pads to put their RVs on. And I think you said those were legal. Let's say they were on the other side of the yard, and so they're illegal. And I feel for those people. They did what they thought was correct. They did a nice job of it, and the city failed them because the city did not notify them beforehand that this was a problem and you can't do that. And now here we are trying to enforce a code that or an ordinance that was probably good when it was first drawn up, but this I've always been against the bit of only complaint driven, because what's going to happen is you have a RV that's illegally parked but neatly parked, and then you have a son that starts playing the drums in the garage and your neighbor gets mad at him for the drums. They can't find the law for no drums before a certain hour. So they turn you in for having an RV illegally parked. That's just the nature of people for some reason. So I brought up, and I'm very much for, and when I say the number of years, don't hold me to it, I'm very flexible on this. My idea is, because if you go to San Fernando Valley, you can find very many areas. You can find those areas right here in Simi Valley where it doesn't look as good as we would like our neighborhoods to look. And it's simply because of all of the old boats, old go-karts, old motorcycles, old junk, old RVs. And it destroys the value of the neighborhood. So my suggestion is that we do the amnesty. I think it's in the staff report, and I'll throw out 10 years. We give you 10 years to change. My guess is most of us in 10 years, we're not going to have that RV any longer, or we're going to sell our home. And when we sell our home, we notify the people through our realtors, and there's got to be a way of doing it. There's some legal way of doing it. I've signed stacks of papers this high with with notifications that I had to acknowledge when I bought my home. So putting another one in there that says you can't have an RV here is just another step. And if we give them, say, 10 years, hypothetically, and that will begin the process of correcting a problem that we have. It'll take a minimum of 10 years to do it. But at least we have to do something, because in my opinion, when I drive around the city, there's a lot of areas here where I simply would not move simply because of the RVs in the front. Go to San Fernando Valley now, they're allowing RVs in commercial areas. And what a nightmare. What a nightmare, because now, next thing is, well, that's my home, so I'm going to live in it. And that's what they've got all over San Fernando Valley. So do we want to head down that path, or do we want to head down a path for cleaning it up and making it something that we can all live with, and open up the backyards to where we can put them in the backyards without having to build another building to make it legal? But I agree with having to have a surface that is acceptable with the environmental issues that we face today. I think I want to go right back to the proactive versus reactive. Proactive is you have a neighbor turn you in for an illegally parked RV. That code enforcement officer will pass 10 or 15 illegally parked RVs to come and write you a citation or however they handle the problem. I think that's wrong. I think that's in my opinion, that's selective enforcement. And that's something that we can't have. And there might be something down the road where we can look at rear yard size. And I too agree that I have a big yard. I could probably get 4 or 5 large RVs in my backyard. And with the rates that people charge, I guess I could charge my buddies a hunk of change, and now I've got a business going. Will my neighbors appreciate that I have an RV storage yard in the middle of the bridle path? I kind of doubt it. But so there should be some type of size. I mean, if you have a postage stamp lot and you have a 45-foot RV in the backyard that takes up the entire yard, that's probably not going to be acceptable. So that gives you something to work on, Stratus.
I got a real quick, Mr. Mayor, because I remembered something while you were talking, and I need the city attorney to hit me up on this, because I think I got a city attorney's opinion on this back about 5 years ago. This is no longer part of the code, because now if you have a RV on the garage side of the house, I'm sorry, where's the garage? On the garage side of the house, it can go all the way to the back of the yard as long as there's paving. Because that was determined by Marge Baxter, the city attorney at the time, on a house up on Sequoia, off of Sequoia, that had an issue, came to me. I went to the city attorney, and she agreed that there did not have to be a driveway going to a garage in the backyard. It just had to be off to the side of the house on a paved driveway. So we need to find out.
Yeah, I'd have to.
This is not giving the correct scoop.
I'd have to pull that opinion to see precisely what it said. I mean, this picture's out of the code itself. So it looks like if the driveway doesn't extend beyond the house, say on the one that's on the opposite side of the paved driveway to the garage, it looks like that can be quite a long driveway. But you know, I haven't seen the opinion recently, so I can't tell you
what she said was, or what was at the time was, the part about parking the RV in the back of the house. The reason the code was passed, the reason we did it to begin with, was to prevent people from living in the RV behind the house, not putting it on a pad and storing it there. So in other words, it could not be behind the house. When I say behind it, it would be like directly behind the back door of the house or the back of the house. Right back here. But as long as you had the driveway that was paved and properly done as a driveway, they could put their motorhome all the way to the back of their property line if they chose to do so, without a garage. And that was Marge Baxter. I believe it was, well, she was only on for a couple of years, but it was during her tenure as the city attorney.
I don't know if staff has any. Have they digested that? Is it something they're enforcing, or how do they interpret that? Is there any knowledge at all of how that possibly works, or we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on that?
I have no knowledge of that conversation.
I can dig in and find that and resurrect it and see if there's any validity to it.
I'm sure staff has already thought of this, but we also have to remember with the accessory dwelling units that can be put in, that's going to cause some kind of turmoil for being able to put an RV in your backyard also. Simply, you may not be able to have enough room to do it. So keep that in mind.
I would ask, for the research on, what it would be for what costs are I do not want taxpayers who don't have RVs, bearing the cost of broken sidewalk, because that's what our taxpayer dollars go to, public works. And if sidewalks are going to be broken and we have to repave those because people are parking illegally or they don't have the correct driveways, then I don't want that to be a taxpayer cost. That's unfair.
If I could, just real quick, maybe the chief can back me up here. If somebody runs over a curb and damages it, isn't that considered a traffic accident that has to be taken care of through their insurance?
Depends on, hitting a curb is one thing, but if they damage property, then that's something they would work out with their insurance company.
Yeah, because every time I've gone to a call where they've had, again, this is just my personal experience, doesn't mean nothing after 29 years on the police department, but when you go to a call and they've run over the curb and damaged it, they're issued a citation for damaging the curb, and they're made to pay for it, either through their insurance company as a traffic collision, or because there was an accidental damaging of property, it's not considered a traffic collision, but their homeowner's insurance takes care of the curb repair. So it's not something that taxpayers would have to take care of. It is something that the citizen does have to fix because they did break the curb. And it's not taken lightly by any city I know of. That's the City of Los Angeles or Simi Valley.
And Councilmember Judge, and for the rest of the council, we do receive property indemnity, especially in car accidents, especially when there's an insurance company, because that's a ready source of funds that is identifiable for the particular injury, like city retaining walls and things like that. And we do frequently receive compensation for that. The difficulty in this situation is proving the particular cracks in the sidewalk due to particular RVs. That's a little bit tricky sometimes.
That's what I was going to ask Councilmember Judge, as a police officer, if you go to one of those incidents and you get to my house and the curb's all broken up, and I says, boy, I don't know, some guy in a big dump truck came and did a U-turn. Well, what happens then?
That's how we'd write the report, because you just told us a factual statement, and you're going to sign our police report under penalty of perjury saying that what you just said was true and true.
Then who would pay for that cost?
Then I'd be out of it.
Well, then the taxpayers have to pay for it because we don't have a victim or a suspect. But in this kind of case where you can actually show that the person's been driving his car or motorhome over the curbs, which most people that own motorhomes and have to put their car over the curb to get it on their RV lot, they usually use some kind of contraption like a ramp to get it up there, which does not damage the curb. So it's not something that happens all the time. These folks that have these things aren't out there ruining our city curbs, trying to put their things in the backyard. They just don't want to pay what is it, like $300 a month to park one of these things on a lot?
At least.
And the lot that was last built in Simi Valley cost the guy that built it so much money, he's not going to be able to recoup any of that cost for like 30 years because of the way the city made him build a parking lot.
Well, I would rather we be proactive. Mayor Mashburn, you said you'd like to be proactive, and I'd like to be proactive in ensuring, that we aren't damaging and that we don't, foot the bill if we can't prove. I don't think it's fair to impose upon our residents to be investigators and investigate when their neighbor, investigate every time their neighbor goes up and down the curb and whether or not they cause that. That's not their job. I'd rather us be proactive.
Okay. I'd like to venture a suggestion that we leave it at this and put it back in the hands of staff. And we've given you, I think, some suggestions. And rather than take action tonight on saying, okay, we're going to start citing everybody or we're going to do an amnesty, whatever, let you folks come back to us with what you think would be a problem. I want to somehow correct, I think it's a problem, and I know a lot of people here don't agree with me, but I know a whole lot of people out there agree with me. But I don't want it to be a problem, to be a burden on the folks that have currently their RVs and have all along thought it was okay. And again, I'll say it again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. That's the fault of the city for not enforcing the ordinance when they came up with the ordinance, whenever this came up. So let's come up with a solution that hurts the fewest amount of people.
Mr. Mayor, can I summarize what I've heard as at least two or more council members, because there's a lot of ideas, just to give some direction to planning staff, maybe summarize what I think are some of the key points that I heard tonight to bring back to council. Is that,
Yeah,
is
sure.
that okay?
Thank you.
Well, one is I believe that bringing more latitude in the rear parking was one of the areas I definitely heard. As far as rear backyard parking is one area I heard. A second area I heard was maybe looking at some type of amnesty program or time frame. And then a third I did hear a couple times was trying to make sure and still keep in as far as not driving over the curb and things like that, that those could not be done, that they would have to create another curb cut or something like that in order to have it not going over the curb or city sidewalks. So those were the three major ideas. And then the fourth was to make it easier for commercial ventures to create RVs, RV lots in certain areas within the city. Those are the four areas I heard when I tried to summarize and create from the five of you. I don't know if I got anything wrong or if there was anything I missed.
I thought that was a good summary. I'd just like to clarify, when you said the curb modification, that would be for legally parked?
That would be correct.
Okay.
I'd like to ask that we put some type of a time frame on, if possible. I mean, because it's been 12 months since we did this before. So if we could figure out what would be a reasonable amount of time for staff to come back with these ideas. And in the meantime, I'll be happy to meet with the gentleman that wanted to form the committee. So I don't know what it would take for you guys.
Yeah, we can incorporate this either as part of our comprehensive development code update that we proposed back in November, or I can just keep it as a separate item. Anytime we do a development code modification, it is a legislative act. It has to go through all the neighborhood councils, through the planning commission, and finally back before you then. So if that's the process you want to undertake, it'll receive many public hearings, more additional public input and outreach, and hopefully it has a much fuller vetting from the community as well. So if you, that timeline right there, it takes about 6 to 9 months to bring back.
Okay, that just gives us an estimate, so okay, thank you, Status.
And I would just like to thank city staff for their hard work. I know you work very diligently. We have some of the hardest working staff here in the city, so I would like to commend you and our entire city staff for the hard work that you do. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll table this, is that the decision?
Yes.
Agreed. Do we need to make a motion to do that?
I heard his direction, and as long as you're good with the summary, I'm good with where you're at.
Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, thank you very much.
The next session on it a little bit more public too. It's pretty hard to find out about this tonight. Barely knew about it.
Yeah, we didn't know about this till 5 o'clock tonight.
Yeah,
So,
maybe more public, nobody knows about it. It's like being pushed underneath.
We're gonna meet up with you on Facebook. You seem to be on our side, so thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members.
I'm presently on Facebook and I didn't see it, but thank you.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, the next item on the agenda is 9A, City Council member reports.
Councilmember Lister.
I don't really have a report as of yet. I'd like to report this has been a lovely process, and I'm grateful to be here among you. Is that adequate?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Councilmember Luevanos.
Okay, on Wednesday, January 30th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce Happy Healthy Happy Hour at the Best Western Royal Posadas. It was a really good time from some local businesses, and I really appreciated being there. And if you haven't ever gone, it's free. It's they had healthy appetizers and all kinds of local businesses. So talking about everything from senior care to getting, I even won a free massage at one of the raffles. So pretty cool. I invite you guys to go. I think they have them every couple of months, the Chamber of Commerce Happy Healthy Hour, which is pretty fun, and it's free. On Tuesday, February 5th, I attended the Simi Valley Youth Council meeting, which was wonderful to hear the kids talk about their planned talent show, and I encourage everyone to apply to be part of that. And they do want it to take place at the Simi Cultural Arts Center, so I think that would be really fun. On Friday, I didn't go anywhere on February. On Saturday, February 9th, I attended the community swearing in of Congresswoman Katie Hill, who represents us over in Santa Clarita, and was able to, make some communication and represent our city of Simi Valley, which was nice. And on Sunday, February 10th, I attended the March for Our Lives, first ever March for Our Lives meeting in Ventura County, which was nice to see, again, youth civically engaged and involved in issues that pertain to them. I would like to, before we adjourn, wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day, which is this Thursday, and a happy African American History Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Tuesday, January 29th, I attended the SCAG District Evaluation Subcommittee, which was a teleconference here at our City Hall. SCAG is the Southern California Association of Governments, and right now they're looking to realign their representation, or not realign their representation. So that's what they're doing with that meeting. On Thursday, January 31st, I was the only one interviewing candidates for NCs 1 and 3, which was great. I had a great time doing it. I always love doing those interviews. Just like when we had our interview, I'll get to that when I get to it. February 1st, I attended the Ventura County Transportation Committee meeting in Camarillo. Not too much was new out of that. We were just going through some stuff. There's Caltrans report was very innocuous, nothing for Simi Valley, other than the fact that our freeways are going to be rehabilitated pavement-wise this summer, this going into June, so be aware of that. And that's going to start from Tapo Canyon going west on the freeway, because they already did Tapo Canyon going east. So you may be a little inconvenienced starting June. I'll keep repeating that every month so everybody knows. On Monday, February 4th, I attended the RENA subcommittee meeting for SCAG. Yes, again, that was another teleconference done here, because SCAG also has to, SCAG is the entity that tells the state, what numbers they should be looking at for the regional housing needs. So that's another committee this is another job that SCAG does. Friday, same day, Monday, February 4th, I attended the e-government meeting later in the afternoon, looking to give the city a more broad Facebook page, just so we can address what people were saying as they were walking out tonight, how they didn't know this meeting was going, stuff like that. So if you get onto Facebook, the city has a couple of pages on there. I suggest you look them up, get on those pages, like them, so that you can follow stuff that happens. I don't want to post brag about my own page, but if other council members have their own pages, which I know they do, usually PSAs are posted. It tells you when meetings are and stuff like that. So look them up, find them, like them, and then you'll know. All those are to make sure more information gets out, and it's a good thing. On Thursday, February 7th, I attended downtown at the Southern California Association of Governments, the regional policy meeting and the transportation committee. They had a very good presentation by some new, I can't remember the name of the educational organization it came from, if it was UCLA or not, I'm not positive. But they did give us some really good insight on the fact that everybody's been saying for the longest period of time, and it's been like, it's almost written in stone now, kind of like a lot of other things I don't agree with, that baby boomers, not baby boomers, I'm sorry, but millennials want to live in downtown areas close to shopping, close to everything else. Now, this is true, but not overall true, because now they're starting to see that once the millennials get out and get jobs, which pay a living wage, they don't want to live downtown. They want to live in a house they own, and they want to have a car. This is being found out by educational studies, so it's not something that's, so it's stuff that, it's an evolving thing. You can't just pinpoint one generation and say they're going to want to do this. Everything changes. It's always fluid. So I always tell people, don't get hung up on all that stuff. You got to see how the stuff goes, how it matures, and how it evolves. On Friday, February 8th, I attended the chamber breakfast for our Chamber of Commerce here, 5-star Chamber of Commerce. Always good to go to those breakfasts and see our new businesses coming to town. Small businesses, the backbone of Simi Valley. It's the backbone of our society. So support small businesses in our town. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Friday, February 1st, I attended the retirement dinner for Deputy Chief Joe May on his retirement. Wished him well with a lot of other people, and they reenacted or re-brought up the lineup band. They did a great job. They were pretty funny. On Monday, February 4th, I attended the e-government meeting with Councilmember Judge, and we did speak about moving forward, especially on that Facebook page, and then we also were asking about Twitter and Instagram. So we kind of laid out some ideas with our city staff, and I know they're going to be moving forward with that. And again, it would have helped alleviate the people not knowing about the meeting tonight. So that will be a very positive move for the city. On February 8th, I attended the First Responders Awards Dinner at the Elks Lodge along with Councilmember Judge and Mayor Mashburn. That was a wonderful event. They recognized a first responder from the different areas. We had from AMR, we had Highway Patrol, we had the Sheriff's Department, we had Police Department, and we had the Fire Department. So for our own Police Department, we had our Detective Dan Swanson was honored. And as a side note, the CHP officer is kind of my adopted son, so Officer Herzer was recognized for the CHP. They had a great turnout. The Elks were very appreciative to the first responders, and I think the first responders and their families were just very, very humbled and appreciated the kind remarks and the people there that said thank you to them. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Myself, on Thursday, January 31st, I met with the city manager and members of the Chamber of Commerce to discuss the 4th of July celebration and the method by which we are going to finance that. Thursday, January 31st, I want to thank Mike Judge for covering for me on the neighborhood council interviews. I had a sudden surprise visitor and had to get up early and fly away the next morning, so I appreciate you handling that. I owe you one. I'm sorry? Okay, on Tuesday, February 5th, I attended the RDP 21 Regional Defense Partnership, which is basically, I like to call it the Chamber of Commerce for the Naval Base here in Ventura County, and we're a member of that committee. And there was a great presentation by a Colonel Keith Ward, the wing commander of the Air National Guard in Magoo. And he pointed out that the duty of the Guard, which maybe all of us don't know, is readiness, combat, and civil support with effective, disciplined, and innovative service, and quality infrastructure is their new challenge, what they're trying to do. A lot of their facilities are old and can become dilapidated. They're working on that. In the National Air Guard, there's 113,000 members nationwide, and they serve the federal government under Title 10, and they serve the state under Title 32. So odd operation to have to answer to two bosses, really, the governor and then the president. National Guard happens to be the oldest U.S. military in the U.S. It was founded on December 13th, 1636. It's funded by the United States Air Force. It has a $48 million budget. And here in Ventura County, we have, this will get us excited in one breath and then disappointing in the next, so be ready. We have 8 aircraft in Ventura County. They are C-130s, and the nice thing about them is they're the J model, which I was told means they're the best model around, the most sophisticated, the largest, on and on and on, great things about the J model. And at the base, they have a tanker base operation where they can fill those guys with retardant and fight fires. Now, here's the question. So if that's the case, when the Thomas Fire is burning all of Ventura, when the fire here, the Woolsey Fire is burning a lot of Thousand Oaks and Malibu, why are these airplanes sitting on the runway and the pilots out there watching the fires from a distance? It's called the Economy Act, which the best I could come up with was given its teeth in 1932, which says that all private entities have to be airborne and working before we can call on the Air Guard. Now, so there is a clause to where the wing commander can say, no, this is an emergency, we can launch our airplanes. And all he has to do is call the federal government and get permission. Now, I challenge anybody to call the federal government and get permission to do anything within 6 or 8 months. And that's what happens, and that's why our airplanes full of fire retardant that could do huge amounts of fire extinguishment sit here and watch homes burn, people's lives destroyed, and it's because of the private aircraft that are not at the fire yet, that they all have to be there working before we can use these resources. Now, there might be a glimmer of hope. It turns out that the airplanes are federally owned, but the equipment in the airplanes is owned by the Forest Service, National Forest Service. And that's the stumbling block. So if we are able to buy the equipment and equip these planes with even privately funded, is the way I understand it, which could be up to $2 million per plane, but at least then we could get these things in the air. So ultimately, I think this is the best possible time to make a fight for getting those airplanes launched on initial responses for our brush fires because of the recent fires we've all suffered through. So the timing is correct. Now it's just getting folks to listen to us. Thank you for my rant. The other thing is, during March, probably a little closer to the base, but we might hear some of it out here. They're going to have some major exercises, and we'll be hearing a lot more jet aircraft noise. So don't be alarmed if you start hearing jet aircraft flying over that we don't normally hear. And that's the end of my report on RDP 21. On Thursday, February 7th, we all attended a special city council meeting, and we appointed a new city council member. Congratulations. On Friday, February 8th, myself, city manager, and deputy city manager met with Christy Smith, assemblywoman for this district. I thought it was a productive meeting, very encouraging to hear Christy Smith and to see what a professional she was and how knowledgeable she was. And I think the city manager and her and deputy city manager had some areas of where Mrs. Smith thought she would be able to help the city of Simi Valley. So I thought that was great. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, is 9B, City Council Board Member Request for future City Council agenda items.
Thank you. Are there any requests for agenda items? Future.
Yes, I would like to request that we put the issue of what our city regulations are on water, and if there's any possibility of doing any testing and looking at what the DTSC has done and the DOE to make sure that our residents are getting safe water.
Okay, city requirements on water.
Yes.
And I would suggest that we bring in Joe Deacon to give us a report. Would that be okay, Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Yes.
I would like to have a report on how we can start the process of redistricting our neighborhood councils. I think that the new districts were formed the first of this year, and the city, and now the neighborhood councils no longer align. And I think it'd be nice to have a report about how to best go about aligning them, and whether it should be phased in, whether you immediately shift those, or I just would like to see recommendations on how best to go about doing that, so that in the time, within 2 years when they're, anyway, whether we
Okay.
phase in over 2 years, whether it be done immediately, I think it's the
Yeah,
time
it would
to
be best if
look
they
at that.
mirrored our council
It
districts.
just makes sense, I think.
Yeah, got that. Okay. All right. No other requests? With that, tonight we're going to adjourn the meeting in memory of our crossing guard, Susan Burke. Meeting's adjourned.